Well, I confess my cherished sin is I like to be in control of things in my life. It's not always a happy place to be, so I've been praying about that. I struggle with timing. I think also know how this world should work, and it goes too slow, too fast sometimes, but it's part there. I cherish too much chocolate. I mean, it's not even healthy what I like chocolate, and I eat it way too much. But there are other things that I can share. But let me think about some of the things that God knows about us, that we know that God knows about us. But if I were to say to you today, I know something about you that you don't know that I know about you. So I'm going to ask somebody in this congregation to stand. And I've never done this before, where I just call out a name, but I planned on this. Keith Hallam, I want you to stand up, please. And I know this is our superintendent for our education for the union here. This is Keith Hallam, and Keith, if I were to tell you today that I know something about you that you don't know that I know about you, and I have pictures, are you nervous? He is very nervous. And this is just want to, not the first time you're going to see Keith, but you can sit down, but I'm just going to tell you something. You have changed my life for the last 25 years in ways that you do not know that you have done that. My office was 78 yards away from the technology center at the university. And inside of that technology building, there's the automotive department. I would go down there because my best friend is down there, and I'd teach classes at that center. I'd always walk into the automotive center, and I would go around and play with the equipment, but I'd always go to one machine. This machine is an engine. That's right. Now he knows. There is an engine that was cut in half so you can actually see how the engine works. All of the inside parts and everything. It's just like a glass inside of your engine when you're driving it. And I went in there and I would go and play with that thing. And another student came about and put electronics on it so you can push buttons and things like that. But this is your senior project as a student, your senior project. I'll put his picture up there. There's a plaque there. I never saw the plaque. Can we put that up there, that picture? It's there. Sorry, I think that's a HIPAA violation to put the date of 1983. 1983, where were you? All right, well, we're going to have lunch together, so we're going to have to sort this stuff out. But I became fascinated about how the engine worked. My dad would work. We put engines in and out before a couple times, but I never really understood how they work. So I started the process a couple years ago to rebuild an engine, knowing that, and I'd always have to go over there and see, what's this little thing there? I'd ask, and yeah, they were tired of me being there. But thank you. But if somebody knew something about you that you didn't know, that makes it a little uncomfortable, isn't it? On the other side, when somebody knows something about you that's intimate, it's true, it's go back into your history, that goes back that most people don't know. You share information that goes way back. Then you don't even have to say a whole lot, do you? There's this bond a connection that's there. And what I'm wanting to know today is about the fact that God knows so much about you. What does that change about what you think about God? And this beautiful psalm is got to be one of the favorite ones, but it's also one of the most problematic psalms ever, because it talks about how much God does know and plan and everything. And if God is in charge and planning everything, take a look at this world. Is he really in control? With all the things that God does know, does he really know all the other stuff that's broken? He knows about things inside of us, but look at this world. David did this beautiful song about his perceptions, about what God knows about him, and about what he knows about him, about what he knows. It gets really confusing after a while. It's better just to start reading it. And it has been reading, but I want you to notice that David admits in this song that I cannot run away, hide, or not be aware of God's greatness. Check it out here. The first verse, it says, you have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise, and you perceive my thoughts from afar. This is a prayer of admission. I understand that I know about you what you know about me. What do we say about somebody who knows all things? Omniscient. You know that word, right? Well, this is one of those things that we talk about the nature of God, that God is omniscient. He knows all things. It says, such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. All. Before a word is on my tongue, you know, Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind me and before me, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. God is all-knowing. And knowing that, it makes a decision in our hearts. It puts forth us to a place where we have to make a decision about that. If it is true that God knows all about you and everything, can you trust him? Can you do anything about it? Not really. But if you care about that relationship, you're going to need to make a decision that is God all-knowing? What you know is so finite. When I was thinking about the first thing I ever written, it was on God's will. I was listening to young people always wanting to know, what should I do and where should I be and what's God's will for my life? The number one question young people were asking is, what should I be? What should I do? What is God's will for me? Right? Do you remember? And I used to think, wow, if all of the young people that I know are concerned about God's will for me, that means the future is bright. That the one thing that young people are concerned about is being in line with God's will. So I don't care what the world is turning into. I know there's a generation of young people who want to follow God's will. It's a little hard to do, though, isn't it? Because some people are thinking, well, God has a plan A and a plan B and a plan C. And if everything is also fit in this plan, you have to make a decision about your God. The fact that God knows the future, or what we call foreknowledge, does that determine what people choose? You can have a God that knows the future but doesn't choose it for you. That free will is very much at the center of this book and this story of humanity. So you can actually believe that about him. But if God knows everything but doesn't decide to choose everything in your life, that means God made a decision to your will to choose. Wow. So I started thinking, I don't know so much about this thing that I thought I was so informed about. I started to think how my cynicism and my lack of faith and my doubt and my concern started to make me sick. And then I was reading in the Bible, and there came it's not a bumper sticker, but it was a maxim, a teaching that I started to use. It comes from the Bible. It says, don't let what you don't know to obscure what you do know. Don't let what you don't know confuse you about what you do know. Because today, everyone can say, I know it in my heart. This is true. This great God, and he does love. But the things that I don't know, you have to put it on a different column. But here's the truth. You can actually live on the same page with those both things. There's room in your heart, in your head, and in your life for uncertainty. It's okay. Because what you do know is an umbrella of all. And if I can live that way, I can join the ranks of people of history who went through so many things. And I can still know that God is there. At the end of their story, they're not walking away. But I have to admit, sometimes I feel like I want to. Why? I just want to know. Well, I do. Enough. We have. But that's what David is saying here. So it's not just that he knows all things, but he is also present everywhere. It's in the text. Let's carry on. Where can I go from with your spirit? Where can I flee from where? Your presence. If I go up to the heavens, you're there. If I make bed into the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. God is omnipresent. He is all-knowing, and he is everywhere. God is getting even bigger and bigger in this room, isn't he? In this song, God is getting bigger and bigger. And what's happening to us? We're getting a little smaller, aren't we? What I love, and I've said this before, I married a daughter of the East, and I saved her from the East. I brought her to the West. In the East, all the trees are so green and beautiful, and they're everywhere. But like these hills, Ohio and other places, like I'm as big as most of the hills and trees out there. It's like I want to go to a place where I'm a little smaller. And I would see something. I go all the way to the Northwest, and what do we see? Mountains. And you are put in your place when you drive, even through Wenatchee. You see how small we are. And it's all right. We'll pray for them. But in all the ways, check this out. God is everywhere and around us. And I start to think, what happened when Jesus at the ascension in Acts chapter 1, Jesus has knuckles and knees and hair and a heart pumping in his chest. He ascends to heaven. And everybody's saying, don't leave us. And he promised in John, if you want to read this, it'll blow your mind, John 14 all the way to 16. And it just describes that I'm going, but I'm coming back in every heart, everywhere, every place, and every mind and heart that's open to me. I am everywhere. And when I drive, and when I'm not even thinking about you, you're still behind me and beside me. And you're still poking in my heart. And it also says that he can do all things. So that's another part of God's nature. God is all-knowing. He's everywhere, but he's also able to do all things. In this psalm, it says, "For you created my inmost being." To be able to create this world and look at the intricacies of this world, this order and majesty is beautiful. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained before me were written in your book, your journal. Your thoughts, your dreams about me were written in that book, whatever that looks like, before it even happened. Does that mean God determines everything? God knows all things, but God does not decide what you're going to do. But the fact that God knows where we're at and what we're doing and what we're going through, that should change us. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. When I were to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I'm still with you. I'm going to show you about sand because I don't know if you've ever tried to count the grains of sand. Anyone try that? I did it one time. It's like, and I'm not even talking about a thimble. I'm just like a little bit, I started to, and I just get distracted because I can't see enough. But let me show what sand looks like. But if this is an illustration of God's ability to see the wonders of places that you're not even aware of inside of you, we should have a praise the Lord end to that. I'm going to show this little video. When you see the wonders that we can't see, the God that is created inside of us, even the grains of sand are aware. It's so great. But David doesn't stop with the wonder, because he's like you and I. And he says, but I don't look at those things. I see the world. I see my pain. I see my suffering. I see the world around us. And there is wickedness and evil. And it's like this beautiful, I don't know, like a dream. But he wakes up and says, hold on, there's something really bad in this place. And he goes on. And he would talk about justice. So David inserts at the end of this song, he says, but with all of the wonder, there is wickedness. And if I were in charge, what would I do? If only God would slay the wicked away from me, you who are bloodthirsty. They speak of evil and intent and adversaries misuse your name. I do not hate those who hate you, Lord. I abhor those who are in rebellion. Do you see his sense of justice? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies. Have you ever had a child who had a tantrum that's just like out of control? And he's just, nothing is like, makes sense of what you're saying. They're saying words that are not even in the Bible, in the world, or in language. Just making things up. And then at the end of that, it's just a giant tantrum. But this is real. And evil is real. And if you look at this world in the sense of brokenness and equality, we look at this and we start wondering, is somebody going to push a button to flip a switch or bring a blanket of mercy for people who are in suffering? And there's no answer to that. However, David continues to pray these words. He wants the hand of God over this world and to see that kingdom like visualized, experienced in people's lives. And I don't know about you, but this whole idea of take the wheel or in charge. I have a cowboy hat. And the person who has the hat, it's kind of like you have some authority, don't you? I don't know if I were to talk with this, people would have a sense of authority in my words. Does I have to look? No, my wife is saying, you look ridiculous. Take that off. However, when you wear the hat, you're the sheriff, right? And whatever it is of authority that you might, I like the cowboys, so I put that on. But sometimes I think about this world it works well when God is holding the hat on his head, and he is wearing that. And we're thinking about that. I'm thinking about the things that were broken. It was about 25 years ago in Rwanda. My heart, I love Africa. I go there often. In fact, if I've gone anywhere in the world and spent time, it's in that place. Some of my families are there. My people are there. My friends are there. And I learned so much about joy and faithfulness and clarity in that enduring strength. I learned that from places in Africa. And yet, it was about 25 years ago in Rwanda. It's almost like that there was a tantrum of wickedness in Rwanda. People were killing each other. Two tribes were one was fleeing, the others had the upper hand, and it almost lost a whole tribe of people. We call it genocide. And if you were aware, and if you can remember what was happening in another part of the world, we were thinking, what's going to happen? It settled down, but the death toll is so unthinkable. If you are a criminal, though, and you are caught and you are put into prison, the sentence is about 15 years is the max. So it was about 8 years ago, 8 years ago, all of the murderers were released. Can you imagine what would happen into a town with thousands and thousands were released from prison into homes? What would you find? People were very interested to see what's going to happen when somebody would walk back into town that this person murdered so many people. And they were watching, waiting. And people did. They had family and friends, and some people survived the experience, but they found something, a surprise. The years of faithful people, over the years, a decade and a half, because of the singing in the scriptures of the Bible, prayer again, but the concept of what Jesus has done on the cross was still a center in the minds of people who had been tortured, lost family members. So they came back to this reference point of the gospel in the Bible, in Rwanda, a Christian nation. And they found out that when they came back, people were learning about forgiveness and reconciliation. And in all those things, there were things that I started reading 3 books again. These are people who came and were from that place. And I was thinking about that. I think about this one book, Immaculée. She was with 7 other girls when the genocide happened and people started killing people. She was hidden into the bathroom of a pastor. Hidden and they were saved. But now this woman goes around the world and tells people about the power of forgiveness and God's grace and how we can find redemption from this place. The other one is Catherine Larson. I've read this book 3 times and I cannot read it again without weeping. To find that she came and witnessed the lives of people in the villages and cities, that they found redemption. How is it possible that people can walk from that kind of trauma and sing, "Praise God from all blessings flow"? How can you do that? Ubalde Rangoga. He's a preacher. And he experienced his whole family lost. But he goes around and reminds people about the cross, that all of the sins were put on Jesus when he was killed, murdered. But from the Christian point of view, the biblical story, it wasn't murder. It was a sacrifice where he took our sin, all. In all of this, one of the most amazing insights came from in Christian Today, and I'll read just a part of this. It was Karen Warren. She writes that she was going there to look for monsters after the genocide. She went there to look into these communities to find the people who are the perpetrators, to identify and see how this works in this community of faith, how our people are eating and drinking and worshiping and living and building up again. How can this happen? She says this. She says she was expecting to find criminals and victims identified easily. Instead of finding leering and menacing creatures, she says, I met men and women who look and behaved a lot like me. They took care of their families, went to work, chatted with their neighbors, laughed, cried, prayed, and worshiped. And where are the heinous acts? Slowly, with a deepening sense of dread, I realized the truth. There were no monsters in Rwanda, just people like you and me. Only a God can know all about us and still loves us. What an amazing God. And so this is why David finishes his prayer, his song, in an active step of putting God again. And maybe that's our work to do here. When things are broken, God did not put a Band-Aid on this world by fixing your broken leg or your depression, but he found a way to solve the source of the problem. And now everyone who believes gets to count on a life in eternity. Now, that is the starting point. If that's the starting point, it only gets better and better for us. The psalm is a beautiful admission. The reality of this, that God, who is all-knowing, all-present, and all-powerful, needs to wear the hat, to drive the vehicle, to be in charge. Why? He says this. He's going to give you an opportunity for us to join him. He says this, search me, God. But he already knows that. Why is he doing that? It's because your active admission to God's knowledge, presence, and power in your life. Something's going to happen to us when we say this, God, search me. And you know my heart. All of it. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's anything in my way. And do what? Lead me in the way. God's will is not a place, as nice as Wenatchee is. And God's will is not a person to marry. And it is not an occupation. God's will is when you put your hand in God's hand and go wherever he calls you to go. Remember Abraham? You know what the God's will book for him is? Go to a land that you do not know. Well, that's not a lot of clarity, is it? What does the scripture say? Abraham followed and obeyed. I wonder, what would happen if we were to just say, search me and know me, and walk with me as we go home? What would a community of faith be like to walk that way?